What's going on, folks? Ted from Nerd Immersion here, and I took about a day off, I guess, just to spend some time with family, but we're back in it to finish up our Tasha's Cauldron of everything content as soon as we can. So we finished one of the sorcerers on Thanksgiving. Now let's do the other one, the Clockwork Soul. Before I dive into that, though, I just wanted to let you know if you like what I do here and you like seeing all of this content, if you could subscribe to the channel if you're interested in that, well, hey, that helps the channel out a lot. It means a lot to me. It helps keep me going, and I would greatly appreciate it. I also still have a giveaway going on for Tasha's Cauldron of Everything. It ends on the 30th, so only 2 days from the time you're watching this. So if you want to jump in to get a limited edition of the alternative art cover or standard edition copies and things like that, there is a link in the description where you can check that out. So without further ado, let us dive in. Unearthed Arcana on the right, Tasha's Cauldron on the left. We got Clockwork spells, which was great, which is, again, something I've been talking about, how I think we should have origin spells on all sorcerers. Again, future third sorcerer fixing video coming. So originally in the Unearthed Arcana, we got Alarm, Protection from Evil and Good, Find Traps, Heat Metal, Counterspell, Glyph of Warding, Arcane Eye, Odaluk's Resilient Sphere, Animate Objects, and Wall of Force. We landed with still Alarm and Protection from Evil and Good. We swapped out Find Traps, the worst spell in the game, and Heat Metal for Aid and Lesser Restoration. Both, I think, Aid and Lesser Restoration are not sorcerer spells. Those are typically cleric spells, so that's a big boon. We unfortunately lost Counterspell and Glyph of Warding for Dispel Magic and Protection from Energy. I would have liked to keep maybe Glyph of Warding. Counterspell would have been a big one, but we still got Dispel Magic, so that's kind of in the same realm, so I'm okay with that. Arcane Eye is a great spell, and Odaluk's Resilient Sphere also very good, but Freedom of Movement, arguably a very good utility spell, and a summon spell, the Summon Construct spell, the new one from this book. And then kind of a bummer to lose Animate Objects, honestly, but we got Greater Restoration, a spell typically not accessible to sorcerers, and still have Wall of Force. My whole point being that we've been talking about, this is super useful because these spells are all automatically known, automatically prepared, and don't count against your number of spells known. Typically, in my mind, there's no reason a sorcerer would spend one of their spells known on Alarm if they're even able to, because Alarm is a very situational spell. I think it's best if typically cast as a ritual, even though sorcerers can't ritual cast at all. So this kind of alleviates that a little bit by giving you some spells that might be wasted options if you're really limited in what you can choose. So we had originally Restore Balance, and this was, I think, originally the original wording was really complicated. But when a creature you can see within 60 feet of you is about to roll with a D20 with advantage or disadvantage, you can use your reaction to prevent the roll from being affected by disadvantage or advantage. Charisma modifier times per long rest. It has been pretty much kept exactly the same wording wise. When a creature within 60 feet is about to roll d20 with advantage or disadvantage, you can use your reaction to prevent the roll from being affected by disadvantage and advantage, and it is now proficiency bonus times per long rest as opposed to charisma modifier times per long rest. The thought process being your clockwork, you are sort of based on mechanics and law. So we are kind of restoring balance, removing the chaoticness of advantage and disadvantage, and restoring the balance in that way. Then at 6, we had what was originally called Bulwark of Law. As an action, you could expend 1 to 5 sorcery points to create a magical ward around yourself or another creature within 30 feet. It lasts until you finish a long rest or you use it again. Is represented by a number of d8s equal to the number of sorcery points spent. When the warded creature takes damage, it can use its reaction to expend those dice, roll them, and reduce the damage taken by the total amount. It's now changed to Bastion of Law, and I think it's pretty much the same. As an action, expend 1 to 5 sorcery points around yourself or a creature within 30 feet. And now, you finish the ward lasts until you finish a long rest or until you use this feature again. The ward is represented by, it's d8s. When the warded creature takes damage, it can expend the number of these dice, roll them, and reduce the damage taken by that amount. So what's interesting is originally, when the warded creature took damage, they could spend their reaction to roll the dice. From what I'm reading here, it just is now, which is a big improvement. They don't need to spend their reaction. So when the warded creature takes damage, it can expend those dice and reduce it. So let's say the creature you've warded with your Bastion of Law has Absorb Elements. they could, and they get hit with like a fire damage spell, they could use their reaction to cast Absorb Elements to give themselves resistance and cut that damage in half. And then whatever damage they have since taken, they could use your Bastion of Law to expend the dice to reduce it further. More importantly, you can use Bastion of Law on yourself, and you as a sorcerer will have access to a spell like Absorb Elements, so you could effectively keep yourself alive and in the fight longer because it doesn't utilize your reaction. It's just whenever you take damage. So if, the first turn someone attacks you and you cast Shield to block it, and 2 turns later somebody crits you, you still take the damage so you can activate this. I really like that very seemingly minor change, but very significant in what it does, because the fact that it's just triggered on when you take damage is great. It still leaves your reaction open for counterspell or whatever else. And then at 14, we had Trance of Order. I really like this ability. For the next minute, you can use this as a bonus action, For the next minute, attack rolls against you can't benefit from advantage, and whenever you make an attack roll, ability check, or saving throw, you treat a d20 roll of 9 or lower as a 10. This is once per long rest, unless you expend 5 sorcery points. I think that's the same. Bonus action for a minute. Attack rolls can't benefit from advantage. Yeah, whenever you make attack roll, ability check, or saving throw, treat a roll of 9 or lower as a 10. Long rest or 5 sorcery points. Yeah, I really like that. That fits into the whole concept of order. This is also the only time we've seen reliable talent as a constant on ability that rogues have. This is very similar in that nature, also similar to one of the abilities that the Stars Druid has. But this is for pretty much any d20 roll you're going to make, attack roll, ability check, or saving throw. Also, pretty much removing, at least from the attack roll perspective, any chance that you will miss automatically. And if it's a Constitution saving throw, it will prevent you from, for the most part, keeping concentration because you'll have a minimum of a 10. And then at 18, we have Clockwork Cavalcade. As an action, you summon the spirits in a 30-foot cube originating from you. They look like Modrons or some other construct, and they're intangible. And it creates the following effects within the cube before vanishing. Restores up to 100 hit points divided as you choose amongst any number of creatures in the cube. Any damaged objects entirely in the cube are repaired, and every spell of 6th level or lower ends on creatures and objects of your choice within there. It's once per long rest, or until you spend 7 sorcery points. And I think that kept the same too. 30-foot cube, 100 hit points divided amongst creatures. Objects inside there are repaired instantly, and every spell of 6th level or lower ends on objects and creatures of your choice. Long rest or 7 sorcery points. So unfortunately, this is an 18th level ability, so it does come a little bit late, but it's like a souped up heal. It's 100 hit points that you can use, and it's all 3 of these effects happen at once. This is a way you could get around something like a Wall of Force. Wall of Force is typically something that can't be dispelled, but this can end a spell in the area if it's affecting a creature or an object. I guess Wall of Force technically is a spell, so maybe that isn't an option there. But this can restore, mental capacities to allies who may have been charmed or suggested or dominated. This can heal them. I mean, the damaged abilities could be really interesting if you're like in a siege combat situation and the wall you're protecting is being knocked down. You could just fix it. It is at level 18, which is a little unfortunate. But it's a super powerful ability. A 30-foot cube's pretty big. And it's nice to have healing, right, as an option for you as a sorcerer. Don't forget, you're also getting Lesser Restoration, Aid, and Greater Restoration, some options for some healing and sort of utility stuff. I really, really like the Clockwork Sorcerer because I love Modrons and that whole concept of this, whatever they gave you here, this manifestation, how it manifests on your body physically as like a quirk feature. I really enjoy those a lot. That's why I built them into the Gravity Domain Cleric that I made for the Kickstarter that I was a part of. But I really, really like the Clockwork Soul Sorcerer. I still think I prefer Aberrant Mind more. I think the abilities are cooler. But both of these sorcerers, again, I've never wanted to play a sorcerer before in the existence of sorcerers in 5th edition, and I would play both of these. I think I still prefer, again, the Aberrant Mind over the Clockwork, but Clockwork still is a pretty good one. Has some interesting abilities here that I do like the sound of, especially if we go with the fix that I was discussing where we sort of allow them all to cast these spells with sorcery points. Oh, and something I forgot to mention up front because I'm silly. is whenever you cast, similar to the Aberrant Soul, where you can swap out the sorcerer spells you get and whenever you gain a level, this one allows you to swap out abjuration or transmutation spells from the sorcerer, warlock, or wizard spell list. So you could, if you don't like alarm, which we kind of discussed, you could swap out alarm for shield, for example. And shield is an abjuration spell, right? And I'm not even sure what other access to abjuration and transmutation spells. I think you could get, Armor of Agathis, I think, is a transmutation spell or an abjuration spell from the warlock spell list. So you'd have the option to get that on you, which is pretty cool. There's a lot of interesting things you can do with abjuration and transmutation spells from those 3 spell lists to swap out any of these. Again, I don't really think alarm is a super good choice, so I might swap that for something else. Maybe protection from energy, possibly too. Maybe even aid, depending on what your party balance looks like. You could get a lot of interesting things for you to have them always be prepared and not count against the number of spells you know. So a lot of good stuff. I should have mentioned that at the beginning, but I just forgot as we were going through our final roundup here. But yeah, definitely a lot of really good options for you. A lot of things to look through and see, because you might have access to some really awesome spells you would not normally have access to. So that's it, folks, for the Clockwork Soul Sorcerer. Again, one of the 2 sorcerers that I would seriously consider playing. I feel like Warforged really lends itself. Maybe that's too on the nose, a Warforged Clockwork Soul. A little too much machinery. But it could be an interesting concept, depending on how you work it. So let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. What do you think about the Clockwork Soul? Like I said, I still think Aberrant Mind edges it out a little bit with its abilities, but the fact that this does have access to some late game healing, as well as a couple utility spells that are not usually accessible to sorcerers, the fact that you could do things like Twin Lesser Restoration or Greater Restoration could give you some pretty useful things. Even Twin Protection from Evil and Good could be really powerful too. So we have finished. We're in the caster cluster, as I saw someone reference it. So we have finished our sorcerers. Next up is warlocks, followed by wizard, and then we will have completed all of the subclasses in Tasha's Cauldron of Everything. And then we'll move on to other things like feats and spells and magic items. So thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.